once you know who you are as a good man, there's nothing your wife can say or do that causes you to waver or question that in yourself. When you're grounded in knowing who you are as a good man, it bounces off and you recognize that's her stuff. That's not me. Who she's telling me I am right now isn't me. Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. All right, before I get started in today's topic, which is what is a good man? So I'm excited to talk about this today. As always, I'm excited to be here and teach and share a different perspective with you all. So something that I think is important. This is what I tell my students whenever I meet with my students or I have a group session for my students, is a really important thing is to empty your cup. One of the best ways to hear a new perspective, to let new information in and things that we haven't considered, is that we have to be willing to empty our cup of what we think we know or what we have learned in order to hear another perspective. If we come in with a full cup thinking we already know it all, then we can't hear anything new and we can't let something new in. So it's a good time to empty your cup so that you can learn today. So the first topic that we are getting into today is what is a good man? And then the next topic that I want to get into today is personal integrity and why personal integrity is critical for us as women to make a value and to make important to us in our marriage and in our lives. There are often comments when I talk about accountability or talk about personal integrity that accountability is like kryptonite to women. And I want to talk about that and talk about personal integrity as a path to being happy and a path to having a happy marriage. So that's where we're going today. And let's get started with the first topic. What is a good man? The reason that I want to talk about this is a question that comes up often because my message is meant for women married to good men and for good men married to women. That's who my message is for. That's who I'm speaking to in my videos. And so a question that comes up a lot is, well, what is a good man? And I see it from time to time from women. You know, how do I know if my husband's a good man or what is a good man? And then I also get that question from men wanting a more detailed description of what a good man is. And we're going to talk about why even good men begin to question themselves as good men and why that happens in a marriage. So first, I'm going to speak to the women of the importance of knowing your husband as a good man. And then I want to speak a little bit to the men on this topic, and we'll see where that takes us. Like I said, my message is for good men. It's not for women who are with or married to men who mistreat women. That is what I call bad boys. So men who are manipulative by nature, conniving by nature, disrespectful of women, those are what I call bad boys. And that's not who my message is for. It's not for women with bad boys. And how I like to define a bad boy in a very simple way that helped me and has helped the women that I have worked with is that the bad boys are the guys that our dads warned us about growing up. They're the ones that our dad or a man looking out for us in our lives warned us about, to not be involved with bad boys. They are also, and this is my experience too, they are the guys that when we were younger, we found irresistible. And even though we knew better, we couldn't stay away from them. They were the ones that lived life fast, were incredibly charming, charismatic, very hot and cold. And my first 3 or 4 relationships with men were with bad boys. As women, we want to know, because that's a reflection of the lack of value that we have in ourselves, that then we seek out men who will treat us poorly because that's how we feel about ourselves on the inside. It's a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so for women, you can know that your husband is a good man in one of 2 ways that I like to teach. The first is that you have to slow down to remember the man that you married, to slow down and remember the man that you married, that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with, who you found kind and thoughtful and generous and a good man to settle down with and get married to. Because what happens for us as women, and I'm going to get into this more in the second segment of today's show, but as women, when we are unhappy in ourselves and we don't feel good about ourselves on the inside, when we're stuck in our own internal emotional chaos and low emotional intelligence, we project how we feel about ourselves onto our husbands. And it's our internal experience of ourselves, of how we feel about ourselves, that shapes the lens and perspective through which we see our husbands. So what happens over time in that projection is we lose sight of our husbands as good men, because we are living in a false reality that we have created through the own experience we have of ourselves. So the very man that we married that we thought was loving and kind and that we wanted to spend the rest of our lives with, through our emasculation of them, making them wrong and bad and shaming them because of how we feel about ourselves, begins to completely skew how we view and perceive them. And we begin to see them as irresponsible, as distant, as disconnected, as not caring about us, as that they don't care about the relationship and we're the only one doing any work, which is not true. And our own internal experience of ourselves clouds our ability to perceive our husbands as who they truly are, as good men. So the first way to know your husband as a good man, again, is to slow down and remember the man that you married. The second way to know if you're married to a good man, and most women are married to good men, if you are a nice person, chances are you married a good man. But another way that women can know that they are married to good men is if you believe, and I think that word believe is very important. It is a belief that if you believe and complain that your husband is too predictable, boring, that you can't have deep, stimulating conversations with them, that the passion is gone in your love life, and that's your projection and perception of your husband, you married a good man. Typically, as women, when we decided that we were ready to get married, or our biological clock was ticking and it was time to settle down, we stopped being involved with bad boys and we picked and married a good man. That's generally what happens. And so the reason that it's so important, and we're again going to get more into this in the second segment, but the reason it's so important for women to know that you are married to a good man is because it means that if you are unhappy in the relationship and your husband has become distant and disconnected and pulled away from you, which is what happened for me in my marriage, that as you change, that as you as the woman change and you become happy in yourself and you begin to feel good about who you are on the inside, then that changes the lens and perception of which you see your husband. And you begin to see him as the good man that he is. He re-engages in the relationship, and you can begin to have a dance together and grow and learn through the marriage. As women without accountability, without personal integrity, in our emasculating ways, we are not good women. We are cruel and hurtful and cause pain and harm to our husbands who are good men. The foundation of a good man is that he is caring, loving, hardworking, a good provider, wants his wife to be happy. He has remorse when he acts out of character. And he has a foundation of following through and keeping his word, that integrity is the utmost importance to him. That's their nature and their foundation. And when we see them as anything but that, it doesn't mean they don't have problems and issues and challenges. We're human. We all have problems and issues and challenges. But a good man's biggest problem in his marriage is his wife, because we have not learned how to have personal integrity and accountability and to feel good about ourselves and have healthy relationships with ourselves, that then we take it out on our husbands who are good men. So like I said, I'm going to get more into it for the women today in the second segment of why it's so important to know your husband as a good man, and then what your responsibility is to work on and change within yourself. And now I want to talk a little bit to the men who are questioning, am I a good man? Or what is a good man? How do I know if I am a good man? And the reason that that happens for good men, that they lose sight of who they are and being hardworking and loving and kind and in integrity, is that the emasculation of his wife works to do just that. It causes a good man to disconnect from his nature and the truth of who he is. So one of the first things that I do when I work with good men is have them to slow down and define themselves, to slow down and reflect and define themselves as good men, because they lose sight of that based on what their wives make them believe about themselves through the shaming, through making them wrong, through weakening them. Good men begin to doubt who they are, and they lose sight of their nature and who they are as good men. And so he has to reconnect with that in himself, which is often why he finds himself questioning who he is because that's what the emasculation does. So a good man in a relationship with a woman or in a marriage with a woman is either blind to the emasculation happening, because as good men, it's not in your nature to be shaming and make others wrong and weaken them. So it can be very, very difficult for you to spot your wife's emasculating ways. But because a good man doesn't have those qualities in him, he can't spot it. And as women, we can be very covert in our emasculating ways. And as I've said many times before, women are emasculating on a spectrum. And you can even think of like a bell curve. And some women are on the high end and highly, highly emasculating. Some women are on the low end of being emasculating. And the majority of women, as with most things in life, fall in the middle. And so a good man has to be shown how he's being emasculated, his wife's emasculating behaviors, because he can't see it. Or if he does see it and he has some understanding of what's going on, He doesn't know what to do about it or how to navigate it or how to overcome it. So a good man first has to see that he has been a victim, a literal victim to his wife's emasculation. Because the emasculation is emotional abuse. And once a good man sees that, then he has a choice. And the key is for good men is to not get trapped in being a victim to your wife's emasculation or to women's emasculation. Once you see you are an actual victim of it, then you have a choice and you take responsibility of whether you want to stay in the relationship and learn to navigate it. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Or you choose to leave and take responsibility for your choice to leave. The key is to not sit in the anger and the inability to do anything, because that makes us victims. That something is being done to me that I don't have control and power over. The key is, in order to take responsibility, we have to, or good men have to look at, what is it in me? What's the weakness in me that allows my wife to emasculate me? Because then that is using the emasculation, as I've taught and talked about before, as a gift to be exposed to the weaknesses and limitations within yourself. So you use the emasculation as a way to become strong and confident in yourself, in a way that I thought would be good to talk about today. Is as I've started my channel and seeing other influencers and creators on YouTube who maybe speak about similar ideas that I speak about, is I'm being exposed to this whole new language. It's really fascinating on YouTube. There's this whole language and jargon that I hadn't been exposed to before. And it's been interesting to learn and then take it and understand it through my perspective and what I live in my life and what I teach women and what I teach good men. The language that I've been exposed to recently, which has been interesting, are these concepts of, which I've heard of an alpha male before, but I hadn't heard of the other categories or labels that a lot of people in the red pill space on YouTube use. I hadn't been exposed to before, such as a beta male or a sigma male. And so I thought that this would be a good way for good men to understand the personal growth journey within a marriage to a woman who is emasculating. If you'd make the choice to stay, what the journey is ahead of you. What I see being taught in the red pill space from alpha men to good men, what good men want to understand is that that will never work. Alpha men look at relationships with women as a power struggle, and that they need to overpower a woman's emasculating ways. An alpha man is always going to be able to out-connive and out-manipulate a woman and her emasculation. That's in their nature. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. But an emasculating woman with an alpha man is always bringing a knife to a gunfight, because the alpha man will always overpower a woman, even in her emasculating ways. And so we can look at some examples of alpha men. Andrew Tate is an example of an alpha male. Michael Jordan is an example of an alpha male. Donald Trump is an example of an alpha male. And what good men want to understand, if you're trying to take that advice from an alpha male, is that it's not going to work for you to regain your confidence and your sense of masculinity and your sense of being a man. Because again, it's not in a good man's nature to be an alpha male. To me, that is the equivalent of an average, normal, everyday woman like myself trying to become a badass or trying to become, I think another popular term is like a boss babe. It's not in our nature. It's not in us to be alpha females. And so when we try to become something that we are not and is not in our nature, we begin to wear a facade that is not sustainable. And you do not genuinely regain your sense of empowerment and strength within yourself when you're trying to become something that you are not. And when you try to be an alpha male and you are a good man, your wife will overpower you every single time. She will always win. A good man trying to be an alpha male is the good man bringing a knife to the gunfight with his wife every single time. It won't work. So what good men can think of in this language and in this space is when you are in a marriage or a relationship with a woman and you have been emasculated, you have been weakened and made to believe that you are somehow wrong and bad. And I don't mean this in a derogatory sense. This word, it's disappointing to me to see how this is used on YouTube and from different channels and influencers, because it continues to emasculate and shame good men. But a good man who has been emasculated in his marriage is a beta male. He has lost his sense of masculinity and he has lost his sense of confidence. Again, I do not mean that in a derogatory term. It's a good way to think of in this space what's happening and what your journey is. So the classic example of a beta male, in my opinion, is Will Smith. He has been incredibly emasculated by his wife and lost his sense of who he is as a man and his own sense of confidence in himself. And so a man in that position and what would be called in this space a beta male, the journey for you is to not become an alpha male, because again, that will never work. The journey is to become what is called in this space a sigma male. And my understanding and how I define a sigma male is a masculine man who is down to earth and grounded in his confidence and does not need to be in the spotlight or need to have the power and control like an alpha male. And some good examples, in my opinion, of sigma males. Jordan Peterson is a great example to me of a sigma male. My mentor is a great example of a man who went from an emasculated man, a beta male, to a man who is grounded and confident in his masculinity and doesn't need the spotlight or the power or control. It's a quiet, grounded confidence in himself. If you are familiar with Brandon Tatum, he has a channel on YouTube. He's very passionate and grounded in his ideas, but he does not need the spotlight or to overpower. There's another influencer on YouTube. His name is John Campbell. He's a really good example of a sigma male. So what I teach good men in the journey of using the emasculation of their wife and their marriage as a journey and a gift of personal growth is going from a beta male to a sigma male. Because when you learn to stand up to your wife in a responsible, respectful way, not in an alpha way of trying to overpower or manipulate, the emasculation bounces off. And what can happen is then your wife begins to respect you. It doesn't mean that her emasculation will ever stop completely, but it can actually begin to lessen because you are grounded and confident in yourself and have regained your sense of masculinity. And the emasculation bounces off. And then you still love your wife and see the wonderful things about her. And remember, most women are in the middle of the bell curve. They're in the average place of being emasculating. My message, again, I think this is important too, is not meant for marriages that are beyond the point of being healthy and functional. Is not meant for dysfunctional relationships. It's meant for normal, everyday people who are lost and not understanding how these dynamics work, and to come together and to have a dance and a marriage. They're normal, everyday people who feel lost. And how do we navigate this? How do we navigate this? And so for good men, how you learn to navigate it is to not run away from the emasculation. That continues to make you weak. It's actually to run straight into it for the purpose of exposing the limitations and weaknesses in you that allow you to be emasculated, which is an example of this in another arena of life. All of us as women and men can see different relationships where we are shamed or we are made to feel wrong. And one of those relationships for me right now are shaming comments. They have been a tremendous gift. It would be easy to be a victim to some of the comments that I get and feel sorry for myself, be angry, want to block those people, which when it's necessary, I do, but not from a place of being a victim. I run into that. I am so grateful for the haters and the shamers. Keep it coming, because it allows me to see the weaknesses in myself that allows me to be shamed so that I can grow and I become stronger in myself. And then what happens over time is the shaming doesn't work anymore and it bounces off, and I can actually laugh at it. And then I'll get a comment that it's like a knife to the heart, because I am a good, nice person. And it hurts, but it's not that person creating that hurt inside of me. That hurt was already there. And the shaming comment brought it to the surface so I can see what's the weakness in me that I'm giving my power away to this and feeling hurt and wrong and bad in myself. And it always exposes a crack in my foundation. And then I can do my work through it. And then it bounces off. And then it's great to see my growth, because then sometimes I'll see a comment, I just laugh at it because I know that's not who I am. So it's the same journey for a good man in his marriage. Once you know who you are as a good man, there's nothing your wife can say or do that causes you to waver or question that in yourself. When you're grounded in knowing who you are as a good man, it bounces off and you recognize that's her stuff. That's not me. Who she's telling me I am right now isn't me, because you're grounded in yourself and confident in yourself and your masculinity. And to me, that's the example of a Sigma male. But trying to do what an alpha male teaches is never going to work for a good man, because that's not in your nature. Your nature is you do want integrity and you have care and you're loving and good natured and you see the wonderful things about your wife, and it's not in you to want to overpower somebody or to be narcissistic. And so your journey is to have a grounded confidence in yourself and regain your masculinity through that journey. And what you have to recognize, if you question whether you are a good man or not, you have to slow down and remember who you are. And so I wanted to share, just to wrap up on this segment, I have a few examples from men I've worked with of how they describe themselves as good men. And I won't read through every one of them. I just want to read the similarities. I genuinely listen and care for people. I'm strong-willed and driven. I'm hardworking. Integrity is my most important value. I'm kind and caring. Another example, I'm kind. I want to make my wife happy. I work hard and provide. I'm considerate and good nature. I would never leave someone in the lurch. I am very empathetic. Another example, I work hard. I care deeply about people. I care deeply about my family and being a good dad. I am kind, courteous, and respectful. I have empathy. Personal integrity is very important to me. Are you hearing the themes? And these are all just everyday normal men. I think one of these is from a surgeon, another is from a guy in tech, another is from a hockey coach, just normal everyday guys. I prioritize my children and being a good dad. Integrity is one of my founding values. I am kind, loving, and caring. They don't know each other. They didn't do these at the same time. This is the nature of a good man. And so a man's journey is to reconnect with his nature and himself as a good man, and using his wife's emasculation to regain his confidence and sense of masculinity and not being a victim to it. So we use it as a gift. Before I get into the next segment, this comment comes up quite a bit, is that mothers can be just as emasculating, if not more emasculating, than a good man's wife. And so that is a journey as well. And that's a good place to think of, where most good men want to continue a relationship with their mothers, that in spite of their mothers being who they are, they still care about and love their mothers. And so that is another wonderful relationship for a good man who has been emasculated, to learn to find his strength and regain his confidence and sense of masculinity, is in his relationship with his mother. That's a good example of another relationship you're choosing to continue and be in, to grow and learn. And eventually the emasculation of your mother can bounce off. And that's a wonderful journey for men as well. So I wanted to say that, because that's an important relationship for good men to consider too, where you might be being shamed and made to feel wrong and bad. Next topic, I want to talk about something. This is for the women, and good men, I hope you stick around too. What I'm going to talk about is the most important thing that I teach women. And it's what we have not been taught or had really any understanding, that this is the utmost importance in our marriages. As women, if you ask a woman, what's the most important thing in a marriage? A woman will say trust, communication, intimacy. And from a woman's perspective, we put the responsibility on our husbands to provide those things to us. And if we feel that they are not, then we blame them for the experience of ourselves and our relationship. I live in my marriage and teach other women something very, very different. That the single most important quality and contributor to a healthy, happy marriage is not any of those things. It's not communication. It is not trust. It is not intimacy. Those things fall under the much bigger umbrella that is the most important thing for us in a marriage, which is personal integrity. And what makes us different than good men is that it is not the foundation of who we are as women. If you ask a good man, what's the most important value to you, most will answer something along the lines of personal integrity, or following through with my word, or being the man I say that I am, and keeping my commitments. As women, that is not the foundation of who we are. It is not anything. Personal integrity is not anything that we have ever considered or thought that we need to have a healthy marriage or healthy relationships with each other. And I was the same. Personal integrity was not a part of my vocabulary in terms of what made a happy marriage, and the most important ingredient from me as a woman for a happy marriage with a good man is personal integrity. I had no concept of that. And in a decade of working with women, it is very, very, very clear that none of us have had that concept that personal integrity is the most important ingredient to a healthy, happy marriage. And so how I define integrity is that integrity is being the person you say you are, even when no one is looking. Personal integrity is being the person you say you are, even when no one is looking. And I would say, especially when no one is looking. It's who we are behind closed doors. It is also, and this is very important, it is also who we are on the inside. Our thoughts, our intentions matter. As a woman, I thought that I could wear a facade of being nice and agreeable and cheerful and bubbly for people to buy into that that's who I was, but had no concept that who I was on the inside and my intentions and who I was behind closed doors mattered. And as women, we will wear a facade out into life to work with our friends, with our family, sometimes with our family, sometimes not, but definitely with work, mostly with our friends or women that we want to impress and look good in front of. We will wear a facade of having it together, being stable and nice. And then we get home to our marriages and we get home to our husbands. And we let the absolute worst side of us come out, whether that is overt and outward towards our husband, or it is covert in what we're thinking and who we're being on the inside. And so as women, we have to make a choice that personal integrity is important to us, that it's a standard that we want to hold ourselves to and to live by, to be the person that we say that we are, and to show up and do the things that we say we can do, which means when we are in our marriages, following through to be the person that we say that we are. And I feel very, very, very blessed that I had a mentor who helped me see I had no personal integrity in my marriage and no accountability to who I was and what that was doing to my husband, who is a good man, what that was doing to my marriage, and what that was doing to my relationship with myself before making the choice that I wanted to be a person of integrity, to follow through with my commitment to myself and my husband and the other people in my life, to be on a path and a journey of growing into the best version of myself. I didn't follow through with anything. And the key is I couldn't follow through with my word to myself. I was constantly making empty promises to myself, saying that I was going to change something about me, whether that was something with how I was eating and getting in shape, or being nice to my husband and following through to treat him with respect, to just stopping poor habits. I would say I was going to change something, and then I never followed through. And women, if you're honest and are honest with yourself, you know this about yourself as well. And the fascinating thing, if we slow down to think about it, if we cannot keep our word to ourselves to follow through and be who we say we are and do what we say we're going to do, how can we follow through to keep our word to our husbands or to the other people in our life? to be who we say we are and to do what we say we're going to do. It's impossible. So personal integrity starts with you and the relationship you have with yourself. And the key about personal integrity is that it can't be something you do to look good and to give the impression of the kind of person that you are. Personal integrity, to develop personal integrity and accountability, only works when you follow through to be who you say you are for yourself. Because as long as you're doing it for other people or to look good, it will be a facade and not a true expression of who you are. It has to be something that you do for yourself, that you make important to you because of the kind of woman that you want to be. The purpose of why I created my channel, the Happy Wife School, is to teach and help other women evolve, to know who they truly are as women, and to express themselves as real women, women of integrity and character. I define a happy wife as a woman who embraces her role of being a wife to grow and learn about herself and to feel good about who she is. And then your husband gets the benefit and your marriage gets the benefit. But the only way for it to be what I call clean and without a hidden agenda or expectations for something back in return is that you have to do it for yourself. It's a standard and a character and value that you want to hold yourself to of who you want to be. And it's not anything, like I said before, that we've slowed down to look at in ourselves. And so when we are out of integrity and we don't follow through with ourselves to be the woman that we say that we are, what happens? Here's why it's a problem and an issue in our marriages and our whole lives, but we're focused on marriage. The problem is we don't feel good about ourselves. So some examples of when you are out of integrity in your marriage: always needing to be right, being emotionally volatile and moody, being defensive, being controlling, nagging, shutting down and being the ice queen. Those are examples of not being the best version of ourselves and being out of integrity with who we are. And what we can't see or haven't known to see is that when we show up in those ways, nagging, controlling, needing to be right, bitchy, emotionally volatile, it is hurtful and emasculating and cruel to our husbands. But it is also incredibly cruel to ourselves, because when we act out in those ways, we don't feel good about who we are. And when we don't feel good about who we are because we don't follow through to have personal integrity, what happens is we take those negative feelings we have about ourselves and we take them out on our husbands. And what we need to understand, which I've talked about before in some of my other videos, is that our behaviors have consequences. When you treat your husband poorly and you are out of integrity with yourself and not being who you say you are, those behaviors have consequences in your marriage, where your husband will pull away. He will become distant. He might try to defend himself and yell or fight back. And what we have to see, that is in response to who we are being and how we are showing up in the marriage. So here's how it works with a good man, and why this is so empowering is that when you actually hold yourself accountable and hold yourself to the standard of personal integrity, you follow through to do the things that make you feel good about yourself, that you show up with kindness and respect and act from a place of character and being in control of your emotional state. then your husband responds to that because he's a good man. And as I was sharing in the first segment of today's show, his nature is integrity. It doesn't mean that he's perfect and that he never does anything out of integrity or out of character, but he has remorse and then commits to do better because that's a foundation of who he is as a good man. So when you show up with integrity and you're feeling good about yourself, that is what gets reflected back to you in your marriage to a good man. And you feel really good about yourself. So the key is to develop personal integrity is the ability to be slowed down in yourself and have self-awareness, to internally ask yourself, what kind of woman do I want to be? Do I want to be a woman who's moody, bitchy, controlling, manipulative, nagging, shames my husband and makes him feel wrong and bad about who he is, who never changes and follows through? Or do I want to be a woman whose word means something, that I can see my mistakes and make a commitment to follow through and change, that I can develop high emotional intelligence to be in control of my emotional state and match and show up genuinely and with kindness and care like my husband, who is a good man? Is a question we ask ourselves, and then following through to have the actions and behaviors to have personal integrity. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect. Like I said, I've made personal integrity the utmost importance to me in my life and in my marriage. I am not perfect. I am not perfect. But to me, integrity always means walking in life with the self-awareness and commitment to catch ourselves when we are out of integrity, and then making a commitment to follow through and change and become better and to continue to evolve into the best version of ourselves. Personal integrity is not a place that you get to and you arrive to and you're there. To me, personal integrity is a very deliberate and conscious act to self-reflect and to see where we are out of integrity so that we can make the changes to be in integrity with ourselves and have the character that we say that we want to have. And it is in that path that we can actually become a good woman and be in control of our emotional state, see our husbands for the good men that they are, and then have a happy, healthy relationship with ourselves and a happy, healthy marriage. But without personal integrity as the standard that you hold yourself to in your marriage of being who you say you are and being accountable to yourself and your own words and actions and behaviors, and also what's happening on the inside. Because here's the thing, you can have a smile on your face and have the facade of being nice and caring and being in control of your emotional state, but a good man is very sensitive. Meaning a good man is sensitive to what's happening. He might not totally understand, but my husband always feels when there's something not matching up with how I'm showing up and what's happening on the inside. And he is a man that's taken that journey to go from beta male to sigma male and is on that journey in himself and has become very strong in himself and regained his sense of masculinity and confidence. And he will call me out. That something's off. What's going on? Because he can feel when what I'm presenting outwardly is not matching up with what's going on inside of me. So personal integrity is taking responsibility for our words, our actions, but also what's happening on the inside of us, that actually matters. And that becomes the umbrella, the overarching umbrella for all the other healthy components of a relationship, like trust, communication, intimacy. Without personal integrity with ourselves, we will never have those things in a relationship or a marriage. And personal integrity is the best path to being happy, which I define as feeling good about who you are and having a healthy relationship with yourself. When you have personal integrity and you are committed to being the best version of yourself and continuing to grow into the best version of yourself, you will be happy, meaning you feel good about who you are. You only want to be you, and you only want the life that you want. And the cherry on top, if you are married to a good man, is you will have the most beautiful, wonderful marriage that you could ever imagine. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't, go check me out on YouTube, Rumble, and X. You can find the links in the description below to connect with me there. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to take responsibility and change your own inner turmoil and unhappiness, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program, which is the solution to the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself and the issues and challenges you have in your life and your marriage. You can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. And for the good men listening who want a solution to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I have a course for you too called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only that teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. Again, you can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. Thank you again so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.